Buonasera a tutti e tutte.
Good afternoon, everybody. Please take your seats. I hope you can hear us. So please sit down because we're about to begin. So can you hear us? Paola? Can you hear Paola? Okay. I'm Merit Tewolde. I'm Vice President of the Association Reseau. Before we get started, I'll give you some technical information. There's simultaneous interpreting. So Italian, English and French, and also Arabic. So the channels in the room, 2 for English, 25 for Arabic, 4 for Italian and 3 for French.
Per chi ci segue da casa,
If you're following from home, at the lower left of your screen, you'll see you've got a button for choosing the language.
I'm Merit Tewolde Michael, Vice President of Associazione Reseau. And before starting, I would like to give you some technical information. The working languages are Italian, French, and English. We have the simultaneous translation through Italian, English, French, and Arabic. You can choose the language for those who are in presence. The channel are 2 for English, 3 Italian, 4 French, and 25 for Arab. For those who are in online, you can choose the language in choosing the language on the icon that you have on the left side of the computer. Thank you. Je ne parle pas très bien français pour les Français. Je suis Merit Tewolde Michael, Vice President de l'Association Reseau. Avant de partir.
So, before we get started, I just wanted to provide you a little bit of extra technical information. Working languages, Italian, French, and English. We've got interpreting. So, Italian, Arabic, French, and English. For the people in the room, the channels are 2 for English, 3 for French, 4 for Italian, and 25 for Arabic. For those following online, you can select the language at the bottom of your screen on the left.
Buongiorno di nuovo.
So, anyway, good afternoon once again. It's an honor for us to be with you today. I don't know if you can hear me properly. I don't know if I need to raise my voice to be heard. So I'll try and speak nice and loudly. It's an honor for us to be here with you today. It's the International Day for combating female genital mutilation and for zero tolerance. It's an honor for us, the Project Y Act, to have the possibility to close the project here at the European Parliament. I'd like to thank Cristina Guarda, the MEP, for having invited us to host this event in the European Parliament. It's been a long project with lots of hard work, but with extraordinary results. And I'd like to thank the EU for having provided some of the economic resources for this kind of project. The day will be structured with some institutional greetings. Then there'll be a presentation of the project. And then we'll break down into micro panels to talk about some of the specific subjects involving the people who have worked with us throughout this process. It's important for us to share with you what has been achieved, but through the voices of those who've been involved. So I will now give the floor to Mrs. Guarda, our MEP.
Much I will speak Italian, so sorry. È davvero un enorme.
Well, I must say it's a real pleasure for me to have all of you here with me today. I'd like to thank you for having got me involved in this process. This is a very important moment, the closure of the project. And it's been a first opportunity for many people to raise their voices against one of the most unacceptable, terrible forms of violence that we can imagine. For me, it's an honor to be speaking before you today, but it's also a duty. And we need to ensure that your voice can be heard by everybody, all of the parliamentarians in this institution. We need to have our voice heard by all of those involved in local, regional and national governments so that we can break the taboo around gender violence and FGM. This is a taboo that needs to be broken down immediately, because otherwise there's a risk that the women who are victims could be double victims, not only through the physical violence but also through social exclusion, which can be serious. It's a very important moment today. We're concluding a European project where Europe is showing that it pays attention to this subject. Now we need to ensure that the work that you've done with all of your partners can make this a standard for institutional interventions, for medical and health work, so that in school environments as well, they can deal better with young women and girls inside educational establishments. So everybody involved has to have an awareness of the subject. It's not a distant subject, but rather it's much closer to us than we might suspect. So this is not just a day for empathy and to standing by the side of the women who have had to suffer this terrible injustice and violence, but at the same time, it's a moment for us to ensure that this demand that there should be an intervention to stop this and to help those who are affected, that this should be part of everybody's daily lives, whether they're male or female. So I'd like to thank everyone for the input that you've provided already. It's a real pleasure for me to share this moment with you, and I hope that from this project, further initiatives will continue the work so that we can discuss this subject in public, so that it's something that's in all of our hearts and that no one should have to suffer in the same way that so many women have had to suffer in the past. So thank you ever so much, and it will be a pleasure for me to listen to what you have to say. It's interesting at a personal level as well as a political level. I'm afraid I'll have to disappear for a few minutes, though, to feed my baby. So I do have some other demands upon my time, unfortunately. Thanks.
Grazie a lei per aver...
Thank you. I know that you have your work to do, and it's difficult to get your attention sometimes, so thank you for giving us this time. Now, topics such as FGM can't be seen as a fight for only one type of person. It has to be a fight fought by all of us. I'll now move to give the floor to Paolo Castrani, who is president of Amref Italy. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. It's a pleasure and an honour for me to be here in such a prestigious place as the European Parliament. So I'd just like to start by honestly thanking Cristina Guarda, not only for hosting us today, but from the very beginning she showed her enthusiasm and empathy for the topic that we're talking about today. She's not just here formally, she feels this as a conviction. Today, we're here to talk, to raise our voices, to break the silence. Because silence increases FGM to increase, to spread, whereas with any words that we use about this, we are making steps to protect our children, our girls, our daughters. And that's why we wanted to call today's event Speak Up. This event is really coming at the end of a project that's been co-financed by the European Union. But I don't really want to talk to you about that, nor do I want to talk to you about what FGM is and the tragedy that represents in the lives of people who are victim to it. Because we have speakers, activists who will be speaking in just a moment, and they will be able to say everything there is to say about this topic. But what I do want to talk about is why this project and this event is so important for Amref. Amref is the largest African non-profit healthcare organisation. It's founded in Africa and it's largely based in Africa. And why is this important? Why is this project so important to us? There are a lot of reasons, but I'll just share 3 with you so as not to take too much of your time. Firstly, the right to health is very much at the heart of Amref's work, and particularly the right to health for women and girls. A lot of our projects are focused on girls' and women's health, because they suffer from more health problems than men, both for physiological reasons. We menstruate, we have menopause, we give birth. I won't go through all of them, but that's one of the reasons why we have more health issues. But there are also issues linked to gender-based violence that women are victim to, and FGM is one of those types of violence. The second reason this project is so important to Amref is that for Amref, it's important for young people to participate and to make a contribution. And we're working on a lot of projects to ensure that young people, new generations, will play a role. And that's really at the heart of Why Act that today's event represents the conclusion of. The third, last but not least reason, is that this project has meant that we have been able to share our experience that we have developed in Africa over a number of years in our projects to prevent FGM, and we can share that in Italy and in Europe. It's an example of cooperation, and I think that it's really the specific feature of the work that Amref does. I don't want to take up any more time because I know that you're all very keen to hear from the speakers that we have with us today. I really just want to thank Christina once again and to thank the European Union, which co-financed this programme. I'd like to thank everyone who helped to organise both today's event and the whole of the Why Act project. Not just the people who work for Amref, but all of our partners, Associazione, Reseau, Congi, Bicocca, and all of those. The Why Act activists, as well as the End FGM Europe activists. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you who are here today, because without you, we cannot break the silence. And thank you also to everyone who's listening to us online or who will listen in the coming days. So all the best for today, and let's continue to talk about this to break the silence. Thank you.
Grazie, Paola.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you very much. So now let's get down to the substance of our event, Speak Up, giving voice to a younger generation for the prevention of FGM. And that's part of Why Act. Well, Paula mentioned some of the partners. I'll call them up onto the stage. Marianne Nguyen-Akana, she's the director of the End FGM European Network. Laura Gentile, Naura Gazzui, and Patrizia Farina, who can come up to the front. So we've said a little bit about the project, and you'll tell us a little bit about the process. So while they're coming up to the stage, I'll start with Marianne.
Here, and thank you for helping us to organize this event. And how can European institutions and stakeholders take concrete and sustainable action to eliminate FGM through prevention, and how does the End FGM EU continue to achieve this goal?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Youth Advocate, and welcome here in the Parliament in Brussels. So maybe, first of all, I'm Marianne Nguyen, as we said. So I'm the interim director of the End FGM European Network, which represents 39 organizations working across 16 European countries, including UK and Switzerland, to eliminate female genital mutilation. We exist now since 10 years, but I mean, the European consultation of civil society to eradicate female genital mutilation started earlier in the 19th with the Euronet FGM. So I saw Mrs. Kadikoita, Dr. Komfo, so, you know, shout out to you. And yes, how can European institutions and stakeholders can take concrete sustainable action to eliminate female genital mutilation through prevention effectively? And how does End FGM EU contribute to this good? It's a great question. I mean, let me answer by saying that by taking a concrete action, take concrete sustainable action to prevent FGM. So that's why this year, the End FGM European campaign theme is Invest to Prevent FGM, building a future free from FGM. So this campaign is playing a crucial role, a pivotal role in advancing these efforts. Throughout the year, we will advocate to government, institutions, donors, civil societies to prioritize prevention in their investment and policies, to scale up proven prevention and protection strategies. We are going to discuss with youth, in a moment, but also to ensure the full participation of FGM-affected communities, exclusively the youth, in decision-making processes by sharing the space, sharing this kind of space, this kind of high-level space with the youth, and also take their insight and bring it in the whole movement to end female genital mutilation and to create, for sure, a future where no girl or woman, are undergone female genital mutilation. So indeed, as we said, as MEP Guarda said earlier, so FGM is a grave violation of human rights, deeply rooted in systemic gender equality. It affects over 600,000 women and girls in Europe, and every year 190,000 girls are at risk. So those data are really, really concerning. Despite the progress we've made in recent years, we still face immense challenges, particularly when it comes to prevention, sustainable strategies of prevention. So that brings me to our campaign, the 2025 campaign, Invest to Prevent FGM. So building a future free from FGM. The key message of this campaign is prevention. So we already, okay, perfect. Perfect. So the key message of this campaign is prevention with together, protection, holistic support allow us to build the most sustainable solution for a world free from female genital mutilation and gender-based violence. So this year we'll focus in three main areas: policy and advocacy. We will advocate to ensuring that policies like the EU Directive on Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence are fully implemented to combat the female genital mutilation as a form of gender-based violence. We are also going to advocate and to ask the campaign will also focus on increased investment. So we will call government, donors, and institutions to prioritize fundings for prevention program, particularly those are community-led and tailored to the specific need to the FGM-affected communities. And for sure, we will also, the campaign also aim to amplify the voices. We are committed to give the platform, as we are also here to support the YAG project, who give the platform to the voice of the FGM-affected communities, especially youth. We want to empower youth, people who are survivors or are at risk to become the change makers in their own community. So through this campaign, we will work into breaking the cycle of violence and improving the well-being of women and girls. So the campaign is really also show the impact of female genital mutilation in terms of health, education, and the impact in the whole society. And this campaign also bring why we should invest into prevention, the benefit of the prevention. So for example, by investing €1, we should gain €40 in terms of support services. We have this study in UK, but we also have the French one. By investing €1 on gender-based violence, it's a gain of €22. So those data really show us how prevention is really important and how we should invest in prevention, scale up the strategy, who are working. So we have a lot of those strategies. So in FGM EU, our member implemented those strategies in different high areas. I mean, in Italy, in Belgium, and everywhere. So we call also, the donors and different stakeholders to scale up these strategy, but also to fund this strategy, to fund them very sustainable, because a lot of them are really project-based. And if we need a strong gender transformative approaches, if we need to implement strong gender transformative approach, we should invest in more sustainable, sustainable strategy that require more long-term actions. So as I was saying, the campaign is, really also to bring the fact that we should also building resilient society by investing in female genital mutilation, by strengthening healthcare system, promote gender equality, and advance sexual and reproductive health and rights. So by investing in prevention, we also save government billions. So on Monday we were at the meeting with the European Commissioner of Equality and Crisis Management, and she shared with us that we already have the text, we already have the EU legislation, with the directive. So now it's the time to act. So now is the time to implement this legislation, this EU directive. It's a time to fully implement this EU directive. And she also, share with us that in her current mandate, she will for sure, support and to be sure that the FGM is, still high on the agenda. So, as I mentioned, by investing in prevention, we also save government billions in healthcare and different support services, but also foster economic growth by enabling women and girls to reach out the full potential. So. And then, as I mentioned, this campaign, it also advocates to create a platform for youth to actively participate in decision making. So we are going for each month. So the campaign is really based on the whole year, and we will put the focus on different months. So we launched the campaign this month, and I'm inviting you to join us on our different social media to share your prevention stories and to also have a look on the different practices that we will also share with you. And during also this week, so we are also organizing a full week of event on the FGM European Network. So we also invite you. So tomorrow we will also have a workshop on FGM eCampus, which is an European online platform who support a professional in contact with FGM affected community with FGM survivor. So join us, please, and share your prevention story. And together, let's prioritize prevention, scale up proven action and protection strategy, and ensure the full participation of affected community in decision makers. So we invite you to join the movement, share your story, strategy, and successes, and using the hashtag Invest to Prevent FGM. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. I found very interesting the fact that you raised the point on the build protection and the voice. It's a common issue. And the last but not least, the need of creating and enlarging spaces where we can discuss and find a common solution for the end of FGM. And finally, I'm curious to see whether the priority that you mentioned are a key point on the manifesto. We will see, and I'm curious to see whether. Thank you very much. Ora passiamo al.
So now we'll move on to the description of the project. What brought us to this point? Where did we start from? Where have we arrived at? So I'll give the floor to Laura Gentile, who's head of the project Y-ACT. She'll describe a little bit of the vision of the project.
Grazie Meret, spero mi sentiate.
Thank you very much, Meret. First of all, welcome to this final event, the final stage of this project, the Y-ACT project, a project co-financed by the European Union and together with Le Reseau, Congi and the University of Milan, Bicocca. Well, what did Y-ACT do? The idea of Y-ACT, the ambition of Y-ACT, was to work together, to bring together young people with a migration background and communities to try and combat FGM in Italy, in 4 main cities, Rome, Milan, Padova, and Turin. It did this by training young people with a migration background from very different backgrounds, putting them in contact with adults in their community. First of all, to listen to what the needs of the adults were in their community, to feel what were the roots of this practice, what were the kind of needs that were emerging in their communities. And after a long training period with webinars and discussion groups, in the second year of the project, these young people were keen to get out into their communities, in their regions, and carry out awareness raising. 1,500 people were reached through these activities. In many cases, these were very intimate, small discussions in safe spaces where people could listen to each other and speak about their experiences. There was an opportunity to speak and be listened to, an opportunity to get active and feel part of a broader movement calling for change. So that's why I'm here today, and I brought with me 5 of our young leaders and 5 of the adults from the communities involved. But of course, we're just a small part of a much wider group that's following from home. And I wanted to stress that it's not just actions and objectives to be attained, but it's a question of stories and lived experience. People have opened up, they put themselves on the line, and they want to continue to do so in future. In the manifesto that we're putting forward, as Meret said, there's a real desire that this is not the end of a process, it's just the end of a stage. Because a lot of things have got moving, and I think it's important that we thank each other and congratulate each other. And we also need to thank all of the regional representatives who've been very important in getting involved. The trainers, the mediators, the facilitators, the young people from the communities concerned, all of the colleagues that have been involved in the project, activists from other European and African countries who are here with us today. I think they all deserve our thanks. And we'd also like to thank the European Union institutions who've allowed us to pursue this project. Before I give the floor to my colleagues, I'd just like to thank you all, because for me personally, this has been a chance to learn and to get involved, a chance to share. It's been a privilege to coordinate the project. It's allowed me to get to know people who, on a daily basis, have put in their commitment to make this work. Thank you very much.
A te la parola.
Ok, ora sì, ce la posso.
Okay, it's working now. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nura Gatsui. I'm the president of CONGI, the National Coordination for New Generations in Italy. I'd like to start by thanking all of the previous speakers and also Ms. Guarda. And I'd like to pick up on what she said at the end of her speech. So the importance of involving everyone in this struggle. We're talking about civil rights here, and these should be guaranteed for everyone. And this includes the right to be whole, which is something that's come out from our discussions. I'd also like to thank the president of Amref, who also set out some of the main objectives with the project. And I'd like to pick up on one of those, and that is making sure that the young generations are protagonists. And that's exactly what CONGI is doing. CONGI is part of the Labour and Social Policy Ministries. 10 years ago, this was called second generations. Now we're talking about new generations. Because we no longer look at this idea of migrants coming to search for a better life. That's no longer part of the discourse. I'd also like to thank Laura Gentile. She's also giving me a few points for reflection. This exchange of reflections, of experiences was very important, because that's really at the basis of any change that we want to effect. As CONGI and as Laura Gentile said, it's our responsibility and our honour to guide the young people involved in Y Act. They were, first of all, they received training. That was during the first year, and then in the second year, they were able to themselves become protagonists for change and could organise micro-actions. And that's something that my colleague spoke about a moment ago. They carry out actions to ensure greater awareness within their own communities. So these micro-actions have transformed cities into spaces for dialogue. Any action, it has to be based on dialogue, on discussions, on exchange of experiences. A lot of very valuable points came out of this project, but I would just like to focus on one in particular, and that is intergenerational dialogue. All too often, new generations don't have a space where they can communicate with the older generations. As activists, we've been able to build those bridges that weren't there. We've seen parents and children speak to each other, not to condemn the past, but to understand it, to analyze it with a critical mindset, and to transform it into a springboard for a better future. One key point that characterized this project was the principle of non-judgment. And that's from the very beginning. We tried to approach every conversation with respect, with an open mind, and with a desire to understand, as well as using open language. This has allowed us to create a safe space where every voice can speak without fear, where you can tell people about your experiences honestly and be listened to with empathy. It's only through an absence of prejudice and a desire to listen that it's possible to build an authentic, generative dialogue between the generations. Yes, of course, there were difficulties. We had to overcome cultural resistance, linguistic barriers. My colleague a moment ago thanked the mediators, and I would also like to do that because they were very important for our work. We also faced fear about discussing such a sensitive issue. But every time a mother found the courage to speak, or a father understood the importance of his role, or a young person chose to inform and be informed, then every time we saw that, then we knew we were going in the right direction. We learnt that change, it doesn't just happen through big events, but through small daily actions, because every change matters. A conversation in the square, talking over a coffee, anytime you can sincerely listen to someone. Young people showed with their energy, their courage and their ability that they can bring down barriers. The Y-Act project won't end here. We'll continue to keep it in our vision for the future. Today, one project is finishing, but it's really only the beginning of our path. Thank you.
Grazie Nura.
Thank you very much. I'll now give the floor to Patrizia Parina. Thank you very much. Well, I would certainly echo the thanks we've heard from the preceding speakers. That allows us to get through some of the formalities, but really thank you to everybody who's been mentioned already. The University of Milan Bicocca has got a long tradition of research into sexual and reproductive health, and in particular into female genital mutilation. Since at least 2005, we've been working hard on these subjects. So when we got the chance to take part in this project, we did it wholeheartedly. Well, what was our role in this process? Our role was to evaluate all of the different stages of the project, all of the steps and the objectives that were supposed to be achieved. So it was a counting exercise in a way, counting the events and their impact, but also on a qualitative side. How much improvement was created? How much empowerment was generated? So at the end of the project, I must say, all of the objectives have been fully achieved. We've been very successful, not only because we've executed everything that we were asked to do by the European Union. Of course, all of the indicators are good, fair enough, but I think the quality of the group that's worked together over these 2 years has been very impressive. All of the participants have left a real mark on the project, and they felt bolstered in countering this practice. And it wasn't universally accepted at the beginning of the project. I must say that everyone involved has been very satisfied with their own work. I've seen some of the written comments from the participants. I'll read out a few of them for you. I think it comes out very clearly. The people who said, "I'm very proud of my actions," or "I'm now a person who understands the dangers that can emerge from female genital mutilation." Others said, "We spoke freely with the people around us from the first generation who had never taken up these subjects with us before." And someone else wrote, "At the end of the project, I felt satisfied because I learned more about FGM, but not only that." So I think that this has been a valuable experience. What we can see is that the quality of the activism really improved in fighting the practice of FGM, but also in creating a desire to continue to work on these subjects. Almost all of the young people involved said that they are ready to continue the work. Of course, the availability of funding is going to be a key issue if we're going to build upon that momentum. And I think that they have been able to respond to some of our questions. They say we want to continue because the battle is not over, because there's a need for vigilance and prevention still. And because we cannot allow women's bodies and minds to still be violated in this manner. Thank you very much. Thank you, Patrizia. While you were speaking, I was just thinking, we're 4 partners, but of course I haven't presented my own, which is the Le Reseau. Okay, I'm rather older, but we're representing the new generations. Le Reseau was trying to involve the adults in particular. And it has been very much a successful project because we divided up the tasks. So we didn't want this to be a very vertical exercise. The experience we've had over recent years with European projects is that the success of those projects depend not only on the financing, which is important indeed, but what makes the difference is what the people involved bring to the project. We are people working for people. So when I talk about we, it's a very broad we, involving all of the young people, the community of adults, the local authority representatives. Francesca's been very helpful. It's a difficult context to work in, but I think that we have realized what our own role can be to bring about change. And I think that that is the legacy that we'll be handing over, not only to the young people. We have really set a machine rolling that is going to bring change into the lives of the people involved and the families involved. So I'd like to thank everyone. Thank you, Marianne. And let's have a round of applause for our colleagues.
Prego la regia di partire con il primo video.
So let's play the first video.
Nata sala, lasciatela crescere al silence. Unici danni che le donne hanno subito la mutilazione pirata.
Sana. E consapevolezza. Tradition. Tabù. Trauma.
Ogni parola non detta sulle mutilazioni genitali femminili contribuisce alla loro diffusione. Aprire il dialogo è il primo passo per proteggere donne e bambini a rischio, anche in Italia.
Ecco qua, questo è un piccolo assaggio.
So that was just a small taster of what we're doing in terms of communications and visibility. And the words we use as our starting point are the words provided by these young people to organise our panels around. I'd like to ask the moderators of the first 2 panels. So Jasmina Al-Shiraki, Betania Lulu Barhanu, Coralt Perfanu, Esra Nuir, Animata Sidibe, and Paola Magni to come and join me. Now, we always talk about how important it is to give people a voice. But what's important is not just to give people a voice, but also to be listened to. It's important to teach people that they have to listen to one another, and that's how we can respect each other and ensure that we can listen to people who often don't have a voice, and also to lend them our ear to understand their problems and how we can help them. So now we'll start with the first panel, which is tradition. And I would ask if we can have the video on the second video.
Tradition, I realized that to tackle any problem, it's important to find the root cause. Once we can find the root cause, then we can get long-lasting solutions. Female genital mutilation is deeply rooted in tradition, seen as a form of social recognition, rites of passage, and marital rights. However, it's important to emphasize that female genital mutilation has no benefit in the health of a woman and only causes harm. My name is Grace Fildafanger. I'm from Nigeria. I currently live in Rome, where I study global humanities. I decided to join the WIACT project to gain a deeper understanding of how tradition shapes society. For many, tradition symbolizes community, identity, and continuity. But for me, it presents an opportunity to advocate for the rights of a woman, an opportunity to address harmful cultural practices. Growing up, we're told never to question tradition. However, it's important we do so. We shouldn't be scared of change. We shouldn't be scared to evolve. Change begins with us.
In Italia si stima siano 87.600 le donne e bambine con mutilazioni genitali. Lascia il segno nel contrasto alle MGF.
Bene, il primo panel è tradizione.
So the first panel is tradition. I'll start with a young WIACT leader from Milan, Yasmina El-Shuraki. Yasmina, how can young people find a balance between respecting traditions and promoting cultural changes that will be inclusive and respectful of human rights?
Buongiorno, sono Jasmina.
I'm Jasmina El-Shuraki, and I'd like to start by thanking you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I'm very happy to be able to answer this question. I think that young people can help to find a balance between respecting traditions and encouraging cultural change. And they can do that when they listen and are listened to. WIACT has allowed us to listen, to learn that we have to listen to other people, and that we can set aside what we think and what we think we already know. Being a young member of the new generation is not always easy. I think what's important is to accept the traditions from our background, but also listen to our society. Sometimes it's not easy to decide what traditions to continue or not to continue. So we need to listen to our families, people from our background, the cultures that we come to. But I, as a young person, can start with change in my own life, because that's where I can make a change. You have to value and listen to opinions of other people's, to take on that opinion, but not necessarily make it your own opinion. And that's how a proper balance can be struck. You have to try to ensure this if you want to be a young person from the generation that is bringing about change.
Grazie, Jasmina.
Thank you, Jasmina. That's very interesting. And I can understand very well how you're growing up in between two different generations and two different cultures. Betania Lulu-Bahanu is the director of WIACT Amref Health Africa headquarters in Kenya.
What strategies does WIACT or a similar project use to address tradition that hinder progress without alienating the community that practice them?
Thank you for that question, Mayoret. I'll speak English. I wish I could speak Italian. Good evening,
If you wish, you can talk in Amarigna.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us this chance to speak. To say a bit about WIACT. WIACT is a program headquartered in Amref. It's an official youth program that functions in over 25 countries in Africa, with the understanding that young people are not the leaders of tomorrow, but they're the leaders of today. And the way we approach FGM is similar to stemmed on this exact motto. And we inform, empower, and educate. you know that education is the greatest vehicle to bring equality, and we invest in young people to capacity build them, to ensure that they advocate for their rights and paint a common picture without opposing tradition, but also questioning the harmful traditional practices. With that, they are empowered with coming up with strategies and tactics to address these taboo topics, FGM, child marriage, teenage pregnancy, to sit down with the communities, not with a lot of resentment, but with the intent to inform, educate, and empower, and paint a common picture together to elevate and evolve as a community. So we make sure that we have three things. Of course, first we create a platform for youth to find a common voice, in this case against FGM. We capacity build, as I said, to build strategies, but also we have to track the changes. So we not just empower young people with advocacy skills, and we not only have intergenerational dialogues, but we track the progress that we make with each dialogue one step at a time. We engage with policymakers so that we also influence the legal framework as young people, but also we create that intergenerational co-leadership so that we paint a common picture, and we're not trying to defy where we come from, because tradition is very complex. We are very proud with the cultural identities that we come from, but when you educate, you stop the harmful ones that attack our community. And we harvest our outcomes. Our outcome harvesting is really sharing the practices, positive practices of the changes that we've managed to attain. So one story at a time, we change the paradigm, but also one intergenerational dialogue at a time, we track the changes to policy changes, to sustainable community-owned change and tackle against FGM. Yeah.
Thank you.
But
you want to add something?
Last thing I want to leave the audience with is, I was going to ask, are you an optimist or a pessimist in terms of ending FGM? Pessimist, optimist?
And how do you want them to answer?
They can speak out. Optimist or optimist?
And how? What about the online audience? How do you want? Okay, but we will see.
Once I wanted to say, it's not enough to be an optimist, but to be determined to change the narrative. So it starts with us to stop action about FGM. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Britannia. I agree, information, we have to communicate properly, to advocate. And I think also it's important to communicate that in Africa we have those strong movement and to educate people, to create a new narrative and a flow to drive the change. No, it's important. Thank you. Now, I pass the floor to Kerala Paranot, Senior Project Officer and FGM EU Network. Thank you for being here. From the perspective of a European network like FGM-EU, which approaches have been most effective in mobilizing youth people across Europe and strengthening their role as drivers for change within the communities?
So thank you very much for your question. I would say that from our point of view, I want to explain how we went from not having a youth program to having a podcast, the Purple Chair podcast, made by youth to youth. So in our case, it may appear challenging to engage youth in the end of FGM, because of course youth are sometimes in not in a stable position, can change their minds quickly, so they can seem not committed to the cause. But at the same time, from the other point of view, you can see their enthusiasm, their energy, their ideas. You just need to listen to them to feel inspired at the moment. So we did have an ambassadors program, but we wanted to create a space only for youth. So that would be one of the key points, to create a safe space. A safe space only for youth, where they can mingle, exchange, look for synergies. We created the Youth Ambassador Program in the sphere of the network, and where youth activists from all over Europe are there to exchange ideas. So first thing, to create a safe space that has a multiplying effect. Second key point, not only creating the space, but only engaging with them and building their capacities. Youth have such a huge amount of potential, but at the same time, we have to build on their skills for them to become even greater activists. So, for example, advocacy training or public speaking training, fundraising training even, whatever that can build on their skills, it's very important to empower youth. Also, when the third key point would be not to be patronizing. When engaging with youth, they have their own ideas, they have their own energy and potential. And of course, from a EU network like FGM, we already have a lot of ideas and our annual working plan. But I would say that we have to give this space to youth to come up with their own ideas, and it's our work to canalize these ideas and to find the means to make things possible. So from our Youth Ambassadors program, they wanted to do a podcast. So we find the funding to do that through Erasmus Plus platform that is much more than only exchanges. So we found the funding for that, and we created the Purple Chat podcast, which is a podcast from youth to youth to delve that delves into the different aspects of FGM, but also gender-based violence. And it's them that they build on the capacity to have this podcast and to be vocal. And we had great guests as well, like the mother of one of the activists, MEP Evininser from Sweden. So we came up with a very great program that they are very proud of, and we will have possibly a second phase of that. So I encourage everyone to listen to the Purple Chair podcast. It's in all of the platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolat. Again, we come back to the space, to the need to create a safe space. And I agree with you that we have to be sure that we give to the youth the opportunity of self-determination. Thank you very much. Ora passiamo al...
So now let's move on to the second panel. So I'd like to ask the organisers to put on the second video.
Second video. Thank you.
La parola che ho scelto è tabù, perché nella mia cultura le mutilazioni genitali femminili e anche tutto ciò che riguarda la salute sessuale della donna sono ancora un tabù oggi. Mi chiamo Ezra, ho 23 anni, studio ingegneria, sono cresciuta qua in Italia ma ho origini egiziane. È importante parlarne perché molte donne hanno subito la mutilazione genitale femminile, anche persone a me vicine, ma nessuno ne parla. Negli ultimi anni molte figure religiose sono uscite pubblicamente e l'hanno condannata. Infatti grazie a questo e anche al sostegno della mia famiglia sono riuscita ad evitarla. Purtroppo molti ancora oggi cercano di giustificare la mutilazione genitale femminile mandando avanti miti sulla salute, che faccia bene all'igiene o in generale alla salute della donna. C'è un vero e proprio processo di medicalizzazione della pratica. Le donne soffrono semplicemente in silenzio. Per questo ho scelto la parola tabù, perché è importante rompere il silenzio.
In Italia si stima siano 87.600 le donne e bambine con mutilazioni genitali. Lascia il segno nel contrasto alle MGF.
Dunque.
So no need to introduce her because you've just seen her on the screen. Maybe it's easier for you to talk about the same subject you've spoken about in the video. But my question is, how has Y-ACT contributed, if it has, to overcome taboos linked to FGM in your community? Could you share with us an example of a real change that you've seen thanks to the project?
Buongiorno.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, first of all, Thank you very much for that question. Talking about FGM is never easy, but it's necessary. The work of the Y-ACT group in Milan started with a very simple but powerful idea. The idea is that change is born from awareness. You can't combat a phenomenon if you don't know about it. So if we can break that taboo and raise our voices, other women will be able to do so too. So we brought this conversation into schools, community centers, and associations. It's not a distant problem. I understood this when one of my friends of Egyptian origin, but who was born and raised in Italy, went to one of our meetings, and she said, well, I wanted to have FGM. My mother had it done. She didn't suffer from it. And she says that it was good for her. She had come from a family where FGM was a long ingrained practice that had gone on from mother to daughter. She had never doubted the legitimacy of the process. For her, it was a religious duty even, something that she was not afraid of at all. She thought it was strange that people talked about it in terms of mutilation, which is a strong term and has a very negative connotation. It's called tohura in Egypt, which is a very different term. It's about purity. So it has a very positive connotations. So she had a look at this question from a different light. First of all, she was skeptical because it put in question ideas that she'd always believed. For the first time, she'd heard a different opinion about the subject, different religious interpretations that she didn't know about before. So she wanted to get more information. She wanted to get involved in our meetings. As time passed, her skepticism faded away and became a new awareness. In the end, she spoke about the subject with her mother. And she said she would never want to put her own daughter through such a thing. Because it wasn't just a question just for her, but it's a question for a new generation that is refusing to go through FGM. There needs to be a voice that breaks the silence in the family and in the community. This is why it's so important to talk about the subject, because every conversation that we have can plant a seed. Every person who changes their mind can break a chain that has been going on for centuries. Breaking the taboo is not just an act of courage, but it's an act of justice.
Fortuna che sono giovani, io dico. Grazie.
Thank you very much. Aminata Sidibe.
GMU co-president, Brussels, and COP FGM coordinator, GAMS Belgium. I would like to ask you, how can youth activists from FGM affected communities play a key role in intergenerational dialogue? Thank you.
Hello, thank you. So I'm going to speak in French. So I'm sorry. Donc voilà, bonjour.
So thank you all very much. Good afternoon. The first thing I wanted to talk about is why we decided to work with young people on these issues of intergenerational conversation. What we see is that that one of the strengths of young people is this way that they can get their message across in different types of communication. They can get it out in formats that are noted, that can come across on the major social networks. We have a group of youth activists. 2024 was a very busy year. We got a lot of invitations to schools, to the ULB universities, its faculties, particularly those working in areas linked to health. And these were areas where young people wanted to learn more about the topic, and so they thought it would be good if we came in front of the classes and spoke to them. We discussed this in a lot of different areas. A lot of young people came to us and said that they would like to get involved. And that really helped to motivate us to almost immediately set up a group for young people. We set up this young people's group, and that's for young men and women who come from the countries involved. We saw that there was a need and a wish to discuss this, to discuss all aspects relating to their identity, not just FGM. FGM is something that had come down through traditions or practices. Parents were for or against, but we really want to talk about this identity and education. At the moment, we only have young women in our group. But we want to discuss these traditions and customs with older generations, their parents. But it wasn't just to question all of this, it was also to thank them. The fact that they had this double identity. They born or grew up in Belgium, but they still wanted to keep certain aspects, certain things that they liked in their traditions and their upbringing. But they also wanted to be able to question other points, such as FGM, forced marriage, family pressures, and so on. It's not just to criticize their upbringings, but just to say that we have this kind of split identity and look at which parts of that they wanted to keep. And we thought about different ways that we could communicate this message. I think one of the strengths of young people is their ability to communicate in a way that resonates both with young people and with older generations. And so these young people came up with the idea of a podcast. I'm part of one of the communities that is concerned. I know that parents generations are very much on networks, on TikTok and so forth. So we wanted to have a podcast, including one that we could film, so that we could also share the visual clips as well, so that it would reach the social networks that our parents are present on. So all these topics, traditions, upbringing, education, we really wanted to discuss all of these issues and to invite key people each time. So it would be organized by young people and invite perhaps mothers so they could tell us their perspectives. What did they do? Why did they pass on certain things to their children? What's it like to have these children with this double culture? What kind of difficulties did they experience? We also organized an intergenerational round table to try to mobilize as many students as we could. We did that largely on university campuses. Everyone could come along with an aunt or an uncle. So that they could speak to people from their parents' generation, but not their parents themselves, to try to overcome certain barriers that they might have within the family. This was also one of the means chosen by the young people to try to create this intergenerational dialogue. And also to help the older generations try to understand how they are forming their identity, what they want to keep, what they want to question, as people from the communities affected not just by FGM, but by other issues as well that are specific to certain communities.
I think that sometimes we underestimate the potential of youth and also the potential of the communication in general. So we have also to think about how we can use the new way of communication to reduce the gap between the two generations. Thank you very much. Merci. Dunque, a questo punto io ringrazio.
So at this point, I'd like to thank our panelists.
Scusa, me ne manca una. Scusa Paola, ma volevo...
Sorry, I forgot one. Sorry, Paola. So it's an important part because we're talking about partnership. I'm now going to give the floor to Paola Magni, Head of Strategic Partnerships at Amref, Italy.
In che modo la parte...
So how can strategic partnerships like those promoted by Amref, with whom we have a consolidated partnership, how can they support young people in taking on cultural taboos and giving more visibility to their stories and their battles against FGM, but also violations of their rights in general?
E buonasera a tutti.
Very much, Merit, and good afternoon, everyone. Now, the answer to your question, I think, is to be found around this table. What Amref does is it tries to guarantee that the voices that you hear around this table are the people who are genuinely concerned by the issue. We've heard the presidents of Congi, you've heard from Merit, you've heard from Patrizia from the Bicocca University. What we're trying to do is to get the competent people around the table to put together a project that's genuinely relevant and important given the needs that are out there, and gets through to young people from the communities concerned so that they can work and have their voice heard. And who can do it better than them? So what Amref is doing is to try and ensure that the people concerned are really around the table having their voice heard. Everything that you've heard are the kind of things that Amref have heard in Africa, where they've been working for many years and years of experience. And Amref has put together projects that have shown genuine impact over the years. They analyze in depth. They ensure that their approach really works in practice. So how can we create projects in Europe that see Africa as a place that could teach us things? So we heard that already from the president of Amref. We're trying to break a paradigm because we want Europe to learn from Africa, which has been able to show that there are approaches that can succeed. So Amref guarantees that the voices of the real people concerned are heard around this table. It ensures that we get around the same table the people who are needed to keep this project sustained over the time. I'm not going to call them financiers, I'm going to call them partners as well. Because sharing a common objective and fighting FGM is Sustainable Development Goal 5, right? The international community is showing that it is committed to getting rid of this before 2030. It's not a question of financing. It's a question of being part of a team, part of a partnership, to ensure that this terrible violence is completely eradicated. That's the effort that we are making and that we have been working on for many years now. Although you forgot me just now, we have been working together for many, many years, and it's really been a pleasure to hear the voices this afternoon, to see the videos that you put together, and to see in the front row all of the people whose voices need to be heard. Thank you very much.
Grazie Paola.
Thank you, Paola, and sorry again. I'd like to thank all of you. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the next two panels. I would just remind you that the Y Act project has a podcast as well. Perhaps we could launch a podcast competition. Given that it's something that we all use, maybe we could look into how we could create a network of podcast competitions. Perhaps that would help to create a bit of visibility for all of these initiatives. I can't quite remember. I'm sure one of you knows better than I do.
Chiedo adesso alla regia.
Perhaps we could now see the next video on unawareness.
La parola di consapevolezza, perché appunto è importante che quando sei piccolo sei consapevole, sei circondato dalla tua famiglia, dalla tua cultura e vieni anche condizionato a livello sia del corpo che mentale e anche emotivo, e ci sono anche danni non visibili, però sono ferite profonde anche. Io mi chiamo Ikra, ho 19 anni, sono di origine della Somalia e faccio una scuola serale a Torino. Ho deciso di fare parte del progetto Act perché io prima, non avendo conoscenze sulla procedura di FGM, mia mamma non mi dava risposte chiare, e facendo questo progetto ho comunque scoperto moltissime cose. Magari tu sei convinto, l'hai fatto per l'accettazione della tua cultura, dei tuoi amici e della tua famiglia. È importante noi ragazzi, appunto giovani, che ne parliamo, non solo per il fatto che siamo il futuro, ma anche per non fare gli stessi errori che hanno fatto i nostri nonni, i nostri genitori, di rompere anche il silenzio, che è importante, aiuta anche ad agire altre persone, magari aiuta anche chi magari è in quella condizione lì di confusione, indecisione, aiuta comunque a non portare avanti questa procedura.
In Italia si stima siano 87.600 le donne e bambine con mutilazioni genitali. Lascia il segno nel contrasto alle MGF.
Grazie alla regia e ora...
Thank you. It's now my pleasure to invite the next group of people to the top table. First of all, David Agbonifo, Kadi Koita, Sharon Maitha, Perfection Oyelolaoke, Valerie Lolomari, and Mariam Abba. The podcast I was talking about is called Intere, or Whole. You can find all of that information on the Amref website, as well as explanations about the Y-Act project. You'll find all of the podcasts, the videos, the interviews that we've done throughout our history and all of our awareness raising campaigns.
Thank you. David, how are you?
Fine.
Chiedo alla regia di...
No, we've already seen the video. So now the floor is with David.
From Roma? You are from Nigeria?
Sì.
Okay. How does Y-Act help youth people, particularly male, to recognize the importance of their role in driving change and to overcome an awareness about their rights and the need to combat participants such as FGM?
Okay, as I said, my name is David Osabo Agbonifo. I am from Nigeria. I am part of the Y-Act Youth Leader program in Rome, Italy, and I study in Sapienza. Y-Act as a project was created to not only create awareness on FGM, but also about the health and lifestyle of the female. Now, when it comes to the project playing a part in educating men and helping men understand the dangers of female genital mutilation, it must be understood that in the society, of course, the project does show that women are the one that suffers the violence from female genital mutilation. Y-Act itself is a project that shows men that in a society, males have more power, more influence in the culture and traditions of certain society, because culturally many traditions and norms and ideas were created by the male counterpart in many societies, especially in Africa, for example, as most countries in Africa are heavily patriarchal. Y-Act, in the sense, could first of all be able to create the seed of awareness in these males by showing them the dangers and the problems that comes with practicing FGM on females and certain things. Because, for example, I, as a youth leader that worked with the project in Rome, although I did know about female genital mutilation, the dangers that deal with it, working and trying to create awareness to certain African communities in Rome made me understand that it takes a very large amount of time for you to be able to convince the male counterparts that female genital mutilation is a dangerous part, as most of them have this idea and sense of view that since they don't suffer any consequences from the idea of female mutilation or circumcision, they don't still feel that they need to play a part in female genital in fighting against female genital mutilation. So they just sometimes feel that it's better for them to stay out of the case since it doesn't really affect them in any way. So it is understandable that for us to be able to do that, we have to first partially begin from the ground level, which means we have to go through the educational process, the schools. It creates a possible curriculum that, first of all, deals with the basic part of making people making both the kids in the male side understand the difference of how gender functions, the functionality of gender, the dangers that are involved in certain traditional practices. And then from there, we could slowly go into the society. Of course, yes, Y-ACT is a project that is focused mostly on the youth of the society, since the youths are, of course, the leader of today, as it was said. But it must be understood that sometimes before we could get to the part of the youth, we first need to begin with the part of the children, which grows to become the youth, because when this generation passes, we need a new process to be able to help create a new stance, a new fixed idea on how female genital mutilation is something that no one would have non-awareness, but awareness about its danger. And of course, in this also way, those who already, for example, have no idea about female genital mutilation, in certain people I have met have said that for you to be able to go into the community, to be able to create awareness on female genital mutilation, you have to go through the middleman, which is the man that's the one who talks to the men of the society, because in certain society, like I said, the men are the one that controls how traditions and customs functions. So for you to be able to go through them, you have to go through certain men who are the listeners, who would want to, first of all, take in your idea and see if it's something that is so serious enough to put a stop towards, or something that they would decide whether it is valid to them or not. And also at the same time, through the project, we could be able to make the male gender understand the dangers that deals with mutilation physically, in terms of how it affects women mentally, in terms of their physicality, and also the trauma it creates on them. So from this way, the Project Y-ACT is able to slowly and surely infuse the idea of how FGM is something that has to be stopped, and make them understand that the fact that it's not something that affects them doesn't mean they don't have a crucial role to play in stopping this form of violence. So this is it.
Thank you, David. And you raised the point that Paola Crestani raised at the beginning, that it's not a female question, but it's a social issue, and this is something that's also, and mainly in some society, men has to tackle. And the second point is the importance of inform on the consequences of the practice, because sometimes we don't care because we don't know exactly which are the implications, which is important to thank you very much. Now I move to Kadi Quita, President della Palabre, co-founder of European FGM member of GAMS France. Kadi, what is the role of women who have a direct experience of FGM in overcoming unawareness with their communities, and how we can amplify their voices?
Oh, thank you. Bonsoir, bonjour.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here with you today. It's very important for me because for the last 12 years, Every year we have celebrated the 6th of February. We were with the CEIF in Göteborg when we decided on the 6th of February. And I just wanted to take a minute to say that fighting sexual mutilations today has got to where it is. Thanks to the Italians, to Peace and Justice and the other organizations who have helped us to raise our voices throughout Africa and in the United Nations. A lot of very hard work has been done. And in December 2012, ban FGM was adopted with a UN resolution. Before that, there were resolutions here in the European Parliament. The battle really started here in 2000 in the European Parliament. And I just want to thank all of those people who fought, who mobilized alongside us to fight for the cause, not just for their own reputations. And today, we are proud to see that things are making progress, but at the same time sad to see that FGM is still practiced in this world. 2030 is not far away, so we're going to have to move quickly. Now, on the role of women who have experienced FGM, I think that women who have been subject to FGM have an essential role to play in fighting this practice within their communities. Their personal experience, their bearing witness, are very powerful tools to raise awareness and to change mindsets. It's all very well to talk about it, but you need to change people's mindsets. Without doing that, there'll be no progress. These women have to play a role. They have to bear witness, to raise awareness, to share their own histories, to inform about the tragic physical, psychological, and medical consequences of FGM. They have to break the silence and to question traditions, because not all traditions are good. In all societies, there are good and bad traditions. We have to be brave enough to do away with those bad traditions in order to ensure that we can live better and give a better future to our children. These women have to undertake actions with young women, with families, and particularly men. In lots of society, it's the men who make the decisions. Even if these decisions are taken in the shadows, it's the men who are the instigators. And the women who have been subject to FGM have to take these risks, but we also have to provide other women with a space where they will be listened to, where we will express our solidarity with them. They have to overcome the trauma in order to rebuild themselves. They're the ones who have to raise their voices to plead for an end to FGM, to be activists working with authorities, to lead organizations, to work with international organizations, to put on pressure to bring about laws that will ban FGM. But these laws can't just remain on paper. We have to keep up the pressure to ensure that these laws are properly implemented, because the laws are also a form of prevention. They're not just for punishment. And to finish, I just want to say that we have to support associations and organizations, both local and international organizations, that fight FGM. We have to especially support local associations, support them financially, because this will allow volunteers to strengthen their actions, to amplify their voices, and help them to share this information, share articles, to share witness statements, to raise awareness amongst the people around them, and to help people understand the amplitude of the problem. We have to do everything we can so that leaders, governments, people holding the purse strings will support local initiatives, because financing things on the ground really helps us to move forward. We have to participate in events that will help to raise awareness and also support development projects that will help to improve living conditions for women and girls in affected communities. Also using social networks, that's particularly for young people, to share information, petitions, call for assistance, call upon our politicians. Sometimes even if they speak, they don't want to actually do anything. So we have to ensure that they actually want to act and that they will help to bring the fight against FGM into the light. I'll leave it at that, and thank you all for listening.
Merci, Kadi. Thank you. Thank you also for raising the point on the importance of having a systemic approach involving all the stakeholders to, if we need and want to stop the FGM. And thank you for taking the point also on the 2030, because we think it's we have a very long time. At the end, tomorrow is 2030, and the goals are there, still there. Thank you. And moving forward, I will give the floor to Sharon Maita, Communication and Social Media Officer, WIACT Amref Health Africa headquarters in Kenya. How can communication and social media be used to counteract unawareness and raise awareness among youth people and women about the importance of empowering and social change? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Merit, for that question, and good evening, everyone. Social media is a tool for change, as we've all seen. It's where we walk the talk, is where we change the narrative, and we want to change the narrative in FGM. And I think we need to do targeted social media campaigns, just as the one that Amref Italy has done, which is a very great campaign. And by that, we tell the stories, showcase these short stories that people, we do joke around and say, in my generation, young people, our attention span isn't that quick. But the short stories that we want to tell, the docu-series that we can showcase on social media, are impactful in showing the cases and also ensuring that we do have a clear call to action. We don't just want people to scroll and just ignore the issue. There is the issue globally, and it is ending FGM. And we do want people to go and sign maybe a petition calling on governments, calling on policymakers to pass laws, legalize ending FGM in various countries or in all countries, so to speak. And we're also using social media to community build. Survivors come online looking for someone who has been there, been in that situation, and we want someone who can give that voice to the voiceless. For example, the activists that we've seen today, those are people who have stood before the cameras and told their stories on social media that they've gone through, or rather how they avoided going through FGM through their supportive networks. And people need to see that so that they can see this is how, or this is a process that you need to take. And social media is a very great tool in doing that. My next point will be on use of influencers and partnerships, and it needs to be authentic, credible influencers, grassroots activists, just as the ones we've seen today. The people who have known or who have gone through, let's say, FGM, they need to be the ones who are telling the stories. Because, for example, if you're doing a campaign and you get an influencer who has never even been to the grassroots level, doesn't know what they're going through, doesn't know the pressures that it takes to see someone being forced into FGM. And so that's why you need to use authentic activists. In fact, in storytelling and new media, I actually laughed when you said we need to introduce podcasts competitions. Well, it's very creative. I think we should promote partnerships. Let's not work in silos. WIACT ourselves, we do have a podcast. We've also done a podcast with Amref Italy, telling the stories about ending FGM. I think we did it for a Day of the Girl Child, which was very impactful and educative. You need to have people come to your podcast, just cross-promote it, and also engage the audiences themselves. Let them learn about FGM from you. And also for your social media, they need to be very creative in how you engage your audiences. It could be the short animations that you're trying to see, because we're trying to capture also the younger generation behind us. What do they understand? Do we need to go where they are? Is it on TikTok? We did mention you want to go where the youth allies, we call them youth allies, where they are. Is it on Facebook? But right now we're trying to empower the younger generation so that it ends with them. When we say we're using digital platforms, but digital platforms just don't work alone. We also need to do the offline actions. We work with grassroots localization. That means the grassroots campaigns, so that it comes from them and not us, because they are the ones with the story. So we go where the story is. Even as we're working towards online movement building, you need to also go where the community is. And that means going to understand what they do and how they live, for example, how they end in FGM, and that means localization of even your content. You're going to a community where they speak an ethnic language and they don't understand what you're saying. You're telling them end FGM, but maybe they understand it in their language. And that means you should localize your campaigns online and also having intergenerational dialogues with the community. And I think that way we can use our platforms online and both offline that needs to work together and come together to end FGM.
Thank you very much. Sharon, so who will lead the competition on the podcast? We need to, but thank you for underlining the importance of be trustable when choosing the influencer, and also the importance of diversifying the channels based on the target. We need to reach all the people that we need to sensibilize. So it's important, and thank you for raising the point. Now, I ask the technician to send the next video.
What I choose is trauma, and it was born out of the fear, the pains that I've seen girls go through due to FGM. I'm Grace Atilola Obayomi. I'm a Nigerian. I live now at Uriago, Mira, in Benetton region. I'm a mother of 2 children, and I have a great passion for singing. In fact, I'm part of a choir. I joined YACT project because I want girls to live their life without fear, without pain. I want to help sensitize, I want to help raise awareness and educate families on FGM. Silence needs to be broken. Pains has to stop. Together we can make a world. Together we can create a world where ladies live a free life, a healthy life, without any fear. Let's break the silence. It's time to take the action. It's time to stop FGM.
In Italia si stima siano 87.600 le donne e bambine con mutilazioni genitali. Lascia il segno nel contrasto alle MGF.
So we are on the panel of trauma, and we have Perfection Oyelola Oke, YACT youth leader from Padova, Italy. Perfection, how can young people play an active role in raising awareness about the trauma of FGM and providing support to survivors while maintaining a respectful and inclusive approach?
Thank you. My name is Perfection Oyelola Oke. I am from Padova. I am a representative of the team from Padova. While young people can play a vital role in raising awareness about female genital mutilation and supporting survivors through some of these key approaches, I'm going to start with education and awareness. For you to talk about a sensitive topic, you have to be well educated about it. You can't just go about joining a group that you don't know something about. So self-education is important. As a Nigerian, I know about this topic, but joining this program, this project, I gained more insight into it and I was more educated. Because without education, you can't just talk about people's culture. It can lead to some types of impact on the cultural sensitivity. And as a youth, also taking part in discussions in schools, in meetings and youth organizations to spread awareness is very important. And as a youth of this generation, we are popularly referred to as the Generation Z because we are like more used to technology. So using this to our advantage, we can use social media as the previous speaker spoke about to create more awareness, maybe through storytelling, animation, of course, with the concept of the survivors. And another point I'm going to talk about is community engagement. This is very important in order to address the issue effectively without stigmatizing the survivors, because the discussion should be done with understanding and empathy of the cultural complexities surrounding it. Now, creating safe space is highly important for them to know that they are not alone in this. And also engaging with organizations such as the ENG, FGM, and other organizations involved in this to also create more awareness about it. Now, we can also support the survivors with education, leadership programs, and vocational training, and also providing medical and psychological support for the survivors. For the medical aspect, of course, we are all not doctors or medical practitioners, but in this project, we had the privilege to also collaborate with some other healthcare providers in Padova, and we were able to gain more insights from them. And psychological support, I remember our training in Rome, where Dr. Comfort Momo spoke about the impact it had on one of the survivors she was able to talk to. So the trauma from this is something that we can't just overlook it because it has a long-term effect on the survivors. Now, the change has to start from within the community by working with the influential leaders we have in our community to promote change from within and to also push for better implementation of the laws we have. Now, we can also encourage schools to include the female genital mutilation awareness in their curriculum so that the students at risk can know their fundamental human rights. Now, ending female genital mutilation is not just a task, it is a movement. It is a movement where silence is no longer tolerated. Now, the collective strength of communities, governments, and organizations are highly needed in this. This is not to put blame or create division. It is about promoting understanding, sharing knowledge, and creating a world where harmful practices are replaced with respect, love, and care. So I will urge us to rise, act, and be the change. Thank you.
Thank you, Perfection. And thank you for remind us that the importance of the community and to create a mechanism to make the survivor don't feel alone, to be really supported.
Yes.
Thank you. And now I move to Valerie Lolomari, mental health practitioner, COE, founder, women of Grace UK, Anti-FGM Organization UK. And I leave you free to talk about trauma because
it's fine. The role of the community is fine.
Please, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Merit, for anchoring so beautifully. I want to also appreciate all my predecessors who've gone before me for engaging us in this very important subjects. All protocols observed in the House. I'm going to be talking to us about the role of the community and families in the healing process of the female genital mutilation survivors. I'm going to be sharing with us just a few tips I've written down for us to go through. Healing from female genital mutilation is not just an individual journey. It is deeply connected to the support systems that is around every survivor. Families and communities must play a very crucial role in creating an environment where healing is possible both physically and emotionally. Providing emotional and psychological support is very paramount. Families should offer every survivor a safe space to express their emotions without fear and judgment. I moved from my local West African place where I was brought up to Europe. I lived for so many years in pain, shame, loneliness. I didn't know where to go, didn't know who to talk to. Community support can serve as a very crucial place for you to start your healing when you are a survivor of female genital mutilation. Breaking the silence around FGM is very key. Many survivors we really struggle with internalized shame of fear and rejection. I was in a place where I didn't know who to speak to. No one spoke anything about female genital mutilation. So I was just hiding behind the scenes and going through my trauma. I had to go through 7 miscarriages, but I was very comfortable at home, just losing the babies and hiding behind the scenes because I didn't know where to go. It's important that we engage faith leaders, elders, community influencers, because these ones are the ones we truly respect in our community, and these discussions of this very harmful practice can be taken with them. Educating families and communities on mental health impact as well is very important. So many families do not fully understand the long-term psychological effects of female genital mutilation. I was mutilated when I was 16, 40 plus years down the line, I still suffer from the long-term issues that I had to go through being mutilated. I still suffer from depression, I still have anxiety, I still feel as if I'm not a real woman, I'm not a complete woman. It still plays in my head. Building community-based support network as well is very important. Local survivor-led groups and advocacy network can help empower women to reclaim their narratives. There's something about you being in a community of people who have gone through the sort of pain that you have gone through, people who would understand you, people who will be non-judgmental to what you are going through. Community champions as well is very important. Women who have healed from the pain that they've gone through, who have not become an advocate. It's often said that when you bring one person out of their pain and their trauma, you are educating a whole village. So when you see somebody who has gone through that pain, who is now living a purposeful life, it encourages you. I started to live a purposeful life when I had the encouragement to come out and share my story. And then women started to gravitate towards me, and they started to feel encouraged as well to go back to the community to raise awareness about this harmful practice. We must reframe the narrative as well. Survivors should not be seen as people who are broken. They should not be seen as victims, but they should be seen as women who are resilient and they are prepared to overcome their trauma. You must shift the focus from shame to empowerment, and that will help encourage people to heal and, take the self-worth back. Another thing that I want to talk about is engaging men, and I was very happy to see that David spoke about that in his words. You need to encourage the men and the boys in our society to be a part of this discussion. Many of the discussions about FGM exclude men, yet they are the ones that are mainly the influencers of the whole thing. When I was mutilated, my grandmother thought she was showing me so much love, and she wanted to prepare me for marriage. But guess what? I got married to a man who is from a place that does not even practice it. So what was the point of cutting my clitoris in the first place? He didn't understand what that meant. I had to physically show him for him to know the difference. So it didn't make any sense. So please, can we get the men and the boys involved in these discussions? Can we use cultural and faith-based approaches as well? It doesn't matter whether you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, it doesn't matter. In many communities, the faith and the traditional rulers play a paramount and major role. And if we partner with these leaders, we can get to the hearts of these people in the community to promote this message for them to stop this harmful practice. We must amplify the survivors' voices. When the survivor shares their own stories, in their own terms, in their own words, expressing to you the way they have felt, it empowers them to come out of that pain. Sometimes the representation in the media, just totally dilapidates one as a survivor. Sometimes the media makes it very difficult for survivors to come out and share their stories. For a woman to be brave enough to come out of that dark place, to stand in front of people to share their story, we must give them a push. Ultimately, healing comes when communities move from silence to support, when we move from stigma to solidarity. By standing with survivors, educating every family, and promoting compassionate discussions and conversations, we create a culture of healing and empowerment. And as a roundup, I just want to encourage us. Female genital mutilation is a life sentence. I have gone through it a long time ago, but I still suffer from that pain. I just want to encourage each and every one of you, when you walk out that door, make sure you lend your voice to put a stop to this very harmful practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie, for sharing also your emotion and to teaching us how important it is to feel free to express our emotion. Thank you very much. And now I move forward to Mariam Abba, Brussels and Wallonia Community Voice Coordinator, SCMGF Coordinator, GAMS Belgium. Mariam, can you share a concrete example of a project or initiative that has successfully supported survivors ensuring an approach based on inclusion and mental well-being and that can be easily replicated?
Oui, bien sûr.
Well, of course. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak before you this afternoon, to meet some extraordinary women and some great activists. So we at GAMS have been working for more than 10 years now. I've been working with communities as relays for the voice of communities. We are men and women who have been trained so that we can be resources for our community in the struggle against FGM in particular. And we are the bridge between GAMS and our partners in the community. So, of course, they're mostly women, but not only, and we're there to better understand our own communities. It's very important that we talk about the kind of words we use and what we want to communicate. How can we get the message across? Words are important. Communication with men is important. Social and cultural aspects are important too. So we have to understand the communities we're dealing with if you want to get the message across. So we need to find a way to speak so that we are actually listened to. So we do awareness raising in the community, we have events, individual contacts and community events. We allow people to come to us with projects that we can support. And we have community activities that take place once a month. That depends on each centre, the last Thursday, Friday, or Tuesday of the month. So we try to ensure that we can facilitate communication, have a better channel of communication with the people who are affected. We try and help them to be able to talk about FGM and other violence. It's important that they should have a space where they can be listened to without being judged, where we can put words upon the traumas, words that they haven't dared to use, so that they can support each other, put words on their experiences. And as my sister said, they are out there, they're not victims, they are players in their own transformation and their own empowerment. Thanks.
Merci. Merci, Mariama, and for remind us the importance of creating bridges, because it's important to create spaces, but we have also to create some way of communication, and the importance of finding the right way of communication and to use someone that is inside the community to try to find the right words and the meaning of the. Sometimes we think that we are in a position to teach and to tell and to know how to send the right message, while it's important to involve the people that know exactly how the community is structured and which is the language and the communication, the words that they need to hear to be really heard. Thank you to all of you. Now we will move forward to the next panel. Thank you to our guest and another role. Thank you. Now I ask the technician to send the last video. I think it's yes, on the health.
La parola che ho scelto è sana, perché in Sudan, nel mio paese, si dice "Wulidat salima, da'uha tanmu salima". Le bambine devono essere libere di crescere senza soffrire. Mi chiamo Marwa, ho 30 anni, vengo dal Sudan, sono in Italia da 12 anni, sono mamma di 4 figli, adesso abito a Torino. Ho scelto di partecipare al progetto WIAC per rompere il silenzio sull'MGF e aiutare la mia famiglia e le mie amiche a parlarne. Molte donne hanno vissuto questa esperienza difficile e dolorosa. Per loro è normale, è una tradizione, ma io so che non è così. Sempre più donne parlano dell'MGF e raccontano i danni psicologici, emotivi e fisici che hanno subito. È importante parlare di questo e spiegare i rischi e far capire che possiamo cambiare. Ognuno di noi può fare la differenza. Essere sani significa vivere senza paura, senza traumi.
In Italia si stima siano 87.600 le donne e bambine con mutilazioni genitali. Lascia il segno nel contrasto alle MGF.
E questo è l'ultimo video della.
That was the final video of the campaign that we had for the WIAC project. Now I'd like to invite the next guests up to the stage, Marwa Adam Soliman, Comfort Momo, and Edel Etienne Okoth. First of all, we'll hear from Marwa, who is the last of the WIAC young people. I was very emotional when I heard from you because I met you 2 years ago, and now I can see you transformed into a leader, and it's a great pleasure for me. It's not satisfaction, but it shows that our efforts are paying off. So, Marwa, are you ready? We just saw you on the video. And what I wanted to ask is, what is the role of young people in raising awareness in their communities about the importance of self-determination for girls? And perhaps you could share an example of success that you've seen in your work with WIAC. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity and for your question. Sorry, I'm a little bit emotional, so it'll help me if I can read. The role of young people in raising awareness with the young people and awareness in their communities on self-determination. Well, young people have a key role. Often they're more open to new ideas. They can have a more direct influence on people of their age and on the younger generations. Young people can be the key drivers of change. They can put forward messages of empowerment and equality, as well as respect for human rights. And they can get the messages across in a way that will resonate with other people.
Tranquilla, stai tranquilla, non prendi il tuo tempo, stai tranquilla.
Bene. Portando avanti.
So they can put across messages of empowerment, of equality and respect for human rights in a way that will resonate with other people from their age group. An example of a success story from my work with YACT would be that after I have been a representative for a number of initiatives and awareness-raising campaigns, and I've been involved in training programs, and I've helped to give young people the tools that they need to help bring about self-determination for girls. For example, I've carried out workshops in schools and local communities. Young people learn how to recognize and confront gender-based inequalities and to encourage autonomous choices. And to encourage girls to make choices, to continue with education, to make choices for their own health, to learn to take decisions about their own future. Thank you very much.
Grazie Marwa, perché poi...
Thank you, Marwa. Well, unlike some of the others, you had to go through the effort of writing and speaking in Italian because your language wasn't available. But I just think it's worth having a round of applause for all of the 5 young people who've spoken today. I don't hear the applause yet. Go on. I think it's not just a question of what they said, but the simple fact that they put themselves on the line and came and spoke to us. It's not the same thing as hiding behind the social networks. No, they've come here in person, shown their faces. They've been involved in podcasts in the past, but they've really shared their emotions. And Marwa, really, I think that we all felt with you, and I'd like to thank you for sharing your emotions. So, Comfort Momo is the next speaker. She's an MBE, she's the FGM public health specialist from the UK.
Or systemic barriers that prevent girls from accessing sexual and reproductive health services, and how can we effectively address them?
Thank you. Oops. They're coming on?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you.
You have to be more close to me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. I guess I've been part of your progress for the past few years, And thanks so much to the young people for the fantastic work they're doing. I've been working around FGM for over 20-something years now with Mama Kadi, as you can see, and it's good to see that the work is still, well, what I will say is we didn't think we'll still be here in the last talking about FGM, but just to say a big thanks to all the work that everybody is doing. Right, to answer your question, I'll just quickly say reproductive health is a state of physical, mental and social well-being in relation to reproductive system, which is very important. It includes the ability to have a safe and satisfying sex life. It's very important to have a safe sex life. We all talk about different things, but unfortunately, we shy away from talking about sex. It is very important. And also the freedom to decide when and how or how often you want to reproduce. It's very important because in some areas, this opportunity or this is taken away from people, it's taken away from women, and we need to empower women. We need to give women back the rights in terms of reproductive health. Access health services and information is very crucial. In some areas, people don't have information at all. People don't even know where to go to access information. There is no accessibility to family planning. There's no accessibility to making choice around contraception. The United Nations SDG 3.7 aims to ensure universal access. I keep saying access because I've worked around family planning and sexual health as well for many years. Access is very key and very important. Like I said, the aim of the SDG 3.7 is to provide a universal access to sexual and reproductive health services, including family planning and sexual health services. I remember my daughters are now 34 and 35. I can't remember how old they are now. That's as long. And I remember when I used to provide contraception to young people, giving advice, and then they were little then. As a teenager, as professional myself, I used to get really anxious as to how do I give information to my teenagers. I didn't know how to. Yet I still know how to give information to the group. But when it comes to your own, it's a bit daunting. And what I used to do is bring different leaflets, put them in the kitchen and the living room, with the pretense that they will read it, they'll go through it, and maybe after a few weeks, then I'll bring it, then we'll discuss. And that actually worked. Talking to them years and years after, they said, Mom, you know all the leaflets you used to bring? We used to take them into the toilets and just read them. And also, so it's important to kind of work with your young people. It can be daunting as parents. How do you provide this sexual information? Because we have sex, but we don't want to talk about sex, as you all know. So lack of services, especially in the rural areas, well, the cultural barriers preventing girls from accessing sexual reproductive health can include stigma. Stigma is very key. Again, we don't want to talk about sex. It's only happening when you're married and all that. So it's very important that we take the stigma away. Lack of education. We've been talking about the importance of education. We've been talking about how education and raising awareness is very key. This is very important in raising awareness around sexual health, reproductive health. But the problem is, and the problems where people have is, when do you introduce it? do you introduce sexual health at primary school, secondary school, and so on? So again, that's been a debate that's been going around for many, many years. And also sometimes in some schools, mothers want to, or parents want to withdraw their children from, am I taking too much time? From taking, anyway, let me just go to the key. While the systemic barrier, including limited access to healthcare facility in the rural area, high cost of services as well, we need to look at the costs as well, very important. Lack of confidentiality, discriminatory laws, which we know, the laws and policies and regarding reproductive health, criminal bans on abortion. Abortion is another key thing. When we're talking about reproductive health, we need to pay attention on all that. And sex outside marriage, religious beliefs around sexual health as well as reproductive health, the law that restricts access in reproductive health is very key and very important to kind of, I know I'm going over, to quickly answer overall, how can we address this issue? I've talked about raising awareness, educating women, and educating men as well, which, again, going back to David, we're pleased that we have men, and you're working as a young man to raise awareness in FGM and raise awareness in different topics as well. We need more of you. Education, like I said, and when and how. Keeping healthy, balanced diet, regular exercise is very key to sexual health as well and reproductive health. Avoiding alcohol in excessive and drugs. We need to invest in our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Comfort. I know that I stress all of you, but time is not something that we have. And thank you for talking about the access and the economic barriers that we underestimate. And now the final speaker for this second part of this event, Edel Otieno Okot, it's correct?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
FGMC specialist, Plan International, Germany. Edel, according to your experience with Plan International, what strategies can be implemented globally to promote girls' rights, ensuring safety, physical integrity, and access to sexual and reproductive health, and the true psychophysical well-being of person?
First of all, I hope my microphone is on. First of all, I would like to thank Amref, Italy, for inviting me here. It's such a privilege to be here I don't know if we can say celebrate, but to celebrate the end of this successful project that has empowered youth to raise their voices against this human rights violation. Yes, as you told, I work for Plan International Germany, so I'm sitting here today driven by my professional journey at Plan as a children's rights organization that has championed for very many years for girls' rights, children's rights, but especially girls' rights, as well as my own personal unwavering belief that all girls have the fundamental right to health. When I reflect on my work, one thing that is absolutely clear for me is that the right to access to health is not merely access to medical care, but it's about safety, it's about dignity, it's about freedom to live a life free from harm. Across the world, I'm sure most of us here know that millions and actually hundreds of millions of girls have been robbed of these rights. and they have been subjected to harmful practices such as FGMC, and they face barriers in accessing sexual and reproductive health care. They live in the shadow of violence and discrimination. And these challenges are not isolated issues. They are intertwined in facets of a global crisis that undermines the psychophysical well-being of hundreds of millions of young girls and women, and create devastating barriers that continue to hold them back. So as a global community, I believe, and I think these are not things that I'm going to say that are new to anyone who has been talking or working on this topic, but I think I'm actually just here to underline and so that, you know, we put more emphasis on this. First and foremost, governments must, these are things that we cannot do as NGOs, we can just continue to push for them, that governments must strengthen legal frameworks. We know that there are countries in the world where FGMC is not outlawed, and we even know that there are countries in this world that have tried to repeal laws against FGM. So laws are the first defense line in protecting girls, and every country must ensure that legislation outlaws harmful practices like FGM, child marriage, and all sorts of violence against girls. However, legislation without enforcement is like a shield without a defender. So there must be also legal, there must be robust accountability mechanisms in place, not only to hold perpetrators accountable, but also to ensure that survivors get the justice that they deserve. Then law enforcement is also just not enough. We have to also emphasize on education for young girls. I mean comprehensive education that is culturally sensitive, but empowers girls with knowledge, skills, and also leadership skills. Life skills and also leadership skills. Access to quality education equips girls with tools to challenge harmful norms and question practices that are harmful to their minds and their bodies. We cannot talk about ending FGM without addressing the issue of social norms. And it is a reality that for a real social transformation to take place, addressing deeper layers embedded in gender norms and gender-based violence is very crucial. I want to emphasize on community education, and I also want to emphasize on intergenerational dialogue. We must continuously engage communities, religious leaders, community influencers, youth, families, and we must strive to win the support of men and boys with the aim of creating a supportive environment for girls, where girls' rights are not only recognized, but they are also celebrated. Empowering communities means challenging old beliefs and replacing them with narratives of respect, equality, and dignity. Almost lastly, I hope I'm not taking too long. I think what is also equally crucial is access to sexual and reproductive health services. Every girl should access safe, affordable, and non-judgmental health care. Governments must prioritize creating youth-friendly health care and provide tailored sexual health education that breaks away from harmful practices, but still respects culture, because you know it is, some of us or most of us grow up in a culture that we do not want to live. We just want to live the practices that are retrogressive. When girls have control over their own bodies. They can make choices that protect their health and their well-being. Furthermore, mental and emotional well-being for girls comes from environments where girls feel safe, heard, and valued, and governments must invest in mental health services and provide safe spaces for girls and support networks. So in conclusion, promoting girls' health rights globally requires a multidimensional approach. It is not only about preventing harm, but it is also about creating a world where each girl thrives and safety and health rights are actually guaranteed rights. Thank you.
Thank you. You have summarized all the topics that we mentioned before, and thank you very much. Now I thank to Edel and Comfort and ask to Marwa to stay here with me. We now move to the next point. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And ora ci apprestiamo alla parte.
So now let's move on to the final part of today's event. Maybe it's one of the most important parts of the whole project, and that is the manifesto. With the young people, with contributions from the adults, have put together over the course of the last 2 years. I'd like Marwa and Yasmina to come up onto the stage, and they will introduce the process, and then we will have a look at the main points of the manifesto. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say and what emerged from the meetings, and whether we hear echoes of what our speakers have said this afternoon. Marwa, you have the floor. Today, I want to talk about the manifesto that we created. This manifesto is not just a document, it's the result of a very long process. So as I was saying, the manifesto is not just a document, it's the result of a long process of thought and debate and reworking. The manifesto emerged from the work of groups in 4 different cities that involved young people and adults. The idea of the document was to place at the center the voices of the people who are directly affected. The objective was to create an instrument which genuinely responds to the needs that are out there, the needs that people have, and it should be translated into a concrete impact. The first step was to open a process of dialogue. We organized meetings where young people and adults, both men and women, could speak freely about FGM. It was very important for us to listen to everybody, all of the different opinions that are out there, including the opinions of people who had lived through the experience themselves. So then we put together working groups, we put together ideas. We wondered, how can we deal with the subject of FGM without dividing communities? How can we overcome taboos? We also tried to understand how we could make this manifesto a genuine commitment, not just a document. The last stage was to draft the manifesto. We wanted to write it simply and clearly. We wanted to ensure that it was an instrument that could genuinely raise awareness and create general change. Each word was chosen very carefully to try and transmit a clear message, a positive message that's respectful and inclusive. Thank you.
Adesso passo.
So now I'll give the floor to Jasmine.
Grazie. Fra gli strumenti più.
Now, among the most important instruments that have emerged from this project is the manifesto. As Marwa said, this was put together in all of the communities involved. The manifesto was presented at a final event in each city, and we tried to respond to the expectations of the citizens involved. So it was drafted by young people as part of a process of intergenerational dialogue. The idea was to pick out the actions necessary to combat FGM. The results of the different groups in each city were actually quite similar to each other. There were just more cultural differences rather than differences in the approach. We heard about the need for knowledge through data and more modern and effective communication. The communities brought out the need to involve men in the process of change, not just as allies, but also as actors in the combating the practice. It was important to dismantle myths and beliefs linked to FGM. It was important to break taboos, break the silence, and put an end to the stigmatization that still exists in our society. Breaking the silence through the Y Act program has already started to happen. We've had a process of intergenerational dialogue. We've seen changes ourselves. The previous situation was that there was a big distance between the first generation and the new generation, between the mothers and the daughters. This is a change that we saw in practice, and we thought about what we could change. It made us more authoritative and more empowered. We saw ourselves as important actors in prevention in our own communities, and it's important for us to take part in training. So this contributed to a real personal transformation, both in terms of our behavior, but also in terms of our culture. We moved from passiveness and ignorance to becoming part of this cause and eradicating female genital mutilation. At the events where we presented the manifestos, the young people were able to show that activism within their communities was an example of how they could be persistent but also kind. So, Perfection, David, Mona, Enebe, Evin, Innocent, and Mona. Please come up to the top.
Now, with my colleagues, we're going to set out the articles of the manifest to generate concrete and lasting change in the fight against FGM. First of all, I'll tell you about feminine empowerment, which is key because we want to strengthen the role of women through education, dialogue, and active involvement in the fight against FGM. And now I'll give the floor to Marwa. Accessibility of services. We emphasize the difficulty of access for healthcare services for women who've undergone FGM, indicating that there are gaps in information and the availability of support.
Adesso passo.
And now give the floor to Mona. Intergenerational dialogue. We believe in the need to promote spaces where generations can speak to one another to facilitate dialogue on sexual and reproductive health and on FGM.
Okay, numero 3, convoliamento.
Men's involvement. We want to recognize the crucial role of men in the process of change as allies and as authorities in fighting the practice. The role of men in countering FGM and in creating awareness on the types of FGM and the activities that need to be done to fight it. I'll now give the floor to Perfection.
Azione.
Education and awareness, Reyners. We believe it's important to promote initiatives to raise awareness and on sexual education in schools and in public places. That must be done through communication channels and through artistic and creative means in order to raise awareness. Not just on FGM, but also on sexual and reproductive health. Communication. We believe it's important to talk about FGM and to do so in an effective and sensitive way.
Stigma e tabù.
Stigma and taboo. Stereotypes and prejudice. We have to be vigilant and mobilize against prejudices in society towards communities that practice FGM. Stigma and taboo. In respecting cultural paradigms in the different communities, we need to overcome the taboo associated with these associations and taboos surrounding sexual and reproductive health. Involvement of institutions. Can you hear me? So we want to involve institutions. We want to create dialogue and to work with institutions, local institutions, to create support, to guarantee access to health services and to strengthen the legal framework for what we're doing.
Numero 10.
Number 10, sustainability for initiatives. We ask that initiatives and projects that have been started up thanks to the financing should be able to continue their work in fighting FGM in the future. Thank you.
Con Innocent abbiamo concluso i nostri...
So that concludes our 10 points from our manifesto. Thank you very much.
Grazie a tutti.
Thank you very much, everyone. So please take your seats again. We're now approaching the conclusion of today's event. So I would like to ask, well, who's coming up for the final remarks? Veronica Latuada, can you join me up at the top table? You can get an idea of the effort that everybody has made to try and do this work with a common language. The manifesto was very important to them. So, Veronica, we're now coming towards the end of this project, at the end of our day's event. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Merit. I work for Amref, and I have the honor to lead the programs Amref Italy implements in Italy, including the awareness program and this YACT project. Of course, we do it in team, and so this is really not only a teamwork in terms of commitment, but also in terms of passion with my colleagues who are here, with my partners in this project, and so this is an honor for me. I think that the 10 points of the manifesto are really the main issues that should come out from this meeting today. They say all of what is our next steps, but I also want to share how it is important to see 2 generations of activists, how generous the experienced activists are to be here today, to give their time and their space to share with the young people who took the commitment to try to engage themselves in a project which at the very beginning they didn't know where they would be ending, and they ended doing a great empowerment process. I think that it is tangible in this meeting today how starting from the very beginning, going through the trainings, they had the possibility to share, to hear, and to learn how to deal with tradition and culture in a gentle, persistent way, which is the trademark of the way they decided to define the way they do their social action. Gentle persistence within their community is amazing, and gender transformative approach is something we hear a lot. We hear a lot about intergenerational dialogue approach, and today we have the honor to see it in practice. Its impact, it's under the eyes of all of us, and so I don't want to add anything. I want to thank all of you to be here, those who have come maybe. We know MGF is not like a mainstream topic, but still everybody is here listening to us. Thank you very much. MGF is linked to gender-based violence, and as we heard, is linked to right to health, to well-being, to sexual reproductive health and rights. And it's key that it is linked with youth action and youth engagement, but because we see this in Europe, we see this in Africa. I work for Amref, that youth engagement is the only immediate impact we can bring into changing traditions which are negative and preserving the positive ones. So thank you very much.
Grazie Veronica.
Thank you, Veronica.
The technician to put the EU survey, and we ask you to fill in the EU survey. I know that it's not a thing that you are happy to do, but we need, and it's something that helps us on understanding how we manage our activity. Please. They have it.
Yes.
So you can do also later by tomorrow, but it's something that we kindly ask to do. Thank you.
Yes, this is important for us to get an understanding, a feeling of how impactful and how positive our work has been, and to see your perception and to share with the European Union, who is co-funding this project. So it's crucial for us if you take a little bit of your time to do that. We would really appreciate that. I wanted to thank in particular a colleague, the coordination team of this project, and in particular Laura Gentile, because they really did the difference. They really made a difference. They really put all their professionalism, engagement, determination to make this project work, and work not only in terms of what was written on the paper, on the document, but really in practice, and adapting to the needs of the context of the groups, of the youth, and always finding a way to make this process the more inclusive possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Veronica, grazie. Prima di concludere.
Thank you very much, Veronica. And before we finish by thanking everybody here and all of the people who've been following from home, I just wanted to share with you a thought. I don't know if it was a regional representative or someone from the European Commission that I spoke with today. It's difficult to quantify the impact that we have on people. And the work that you've done has made some kind of contribution to bringing together young people and less young people. And I think the project Y-ACT has had an impact. As Paola, as you said earlier, I prefer the term of partner. And it's important to try and get an idea of the impact we can have on individual people through small actions. Both when we're talking about government initiatives and projects, but also in our small level, conversations we have in our families and friendship groups. We have to have a kind and non-judging attitude. We have to see people in their entirety and see how we can start a process of change. I'd like to thank all of you. I hope this is just the start of a process of change that can help all of us to grow. We've all grown over the last 2 years. We've all learnt. We've not just followed what these young people have been doing, but we've also received so much from you. Thank you very much, all of you. We'll now have a networking session. You can have a little aperitif where you can talk and try and set the foundations for dealing with the challenges that we've worked on today. Oh, and there will also be a group photo to immortalize this moment before you get into your social groups. Thanks. Oh, and after the group photo, we'll go to the 0 floor, rooms 5 and 6, where we can have an aperitivo together, we can get to know each other, exchange ideas, share our impressions of this afternoon. By the way, I could also note that if you want to share the documents, so we have it in English version, you can spread it. We have a real call to action there.
And And thank you to our moderator, because she's been perfectly in time.